Hello, welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for Beep Beep, and with me today is the Roadrunner himself, my good friend Matt Hunter. Say hi.
Meep, meep,
Good, so that's how you're going to talk in the whole review. I'm going to say, what did you think of this short?
meep, meep.
That'll be one very interesting one-sided review, I'd say, but yeah.
Feel pretty short one, yeah, but no, there's a lot more to actually talk about than that.
Oh, definitely. So, as mentioned, this is Beep Beep, released on the 24th of May, 1952. It's the 650th in the series, and it's directed by, well, who else? Chuck Jones. You can find this on the Looney Tunes Gone Collection Volume 2 DVD set, and on the Looney Tunes Plasma Collection Volume 1 Blu-ray set, where it has a much better fate than Fast and the Furious, which was butchered on that release, but this one comes across as being A-okay, which is fantastic.
Yeah, that Fast and Furious print they put on the Blu-ray, they put the digital noise removal on it, and it looks terrible. So yeah, the Golden Collection version was better, and you upscaled that and for the review that we did on it, and it looked a lot better. Now this one opens up kind of very similar to the first one. You get the Coyote and the Roadrunner introduced with the fake Latin names. Roadrunner retains Accelerati Incredibus, and Coyote is Vulgar Carnivore in false Latin. But yeah, that's a gag, of course, that would be prominent in most of the Roadrunner cartoons. They would put a fake Latin name in front of the character as they introduce them. And over time, they would evolve, and Chuck Jones would change it every single cartoon. I'm trying to remember which one it was that was Bat Out of Hellas for the Roadrunner. But anyway, it's pretty much the same premise as the first Roadrunner cartoon, which was so popular that Chuck Jones ended up making another one. And then, of course, this one was so popular that it became a series, and it became one of the greatest cartoon series ever made. Formulaic though it may be, but it doesn't get old because they put enough variations on it that it's still fun no matter which cartoon you're watching. You don't have to watch them in order. And that brings me to something, Anthony, that you were talking about the rules. You're not thinking that Chuck Jones actually wrote that list of rules that's in his book when they were making these.
No. I think that was retroactive, if I'm being completely blunt about it.
Yeah, because Mike Maltese was later interviewed, and he said, I had no idea about these rules. And I made a video about that for the Golden Age Cartoons page, where I actually took a clip from each cartoon that violates one of those rules. Rules were made to be broken, as they say, and I don't think those rules were actually written while they were making these cartoons. But you also pointed out this one's kind of unique because it does something that the series didn't do a whole lot, which is set up a gag early in the cartoon. And you're wondering what's going to happen here. He even pulls out the blueprint. He's got the TNT with the match ready to strike when the Roadrunner supposedly picks up a glass of water. Roadrunner lifts glass of water, pulling up match. Match scratches on matchbox. Match lights fuse to TNT. Boom. And then step 5 is ha ha.
Yes. Steps 4 and 5 are the most important steps, by the way, I should point out. The boom and ha ha.
Yeah. The first payoff to it, there actually is kind of a payoff, is the Roadrunner shows up and he holds up a sign and it says, Roadrunners can't read and don't drink. And you think that's the end of it. Well, first of all, if he can't read, how can he write? How can
I
he
love
write the
that
sign?
gag.
You know, you kind of have to be able to do one to do the other. But then, of course, we get my favorite gag in this cartoon, which is the mine shaft, where they actually put on their miners' helmets when they enter the thing, and it's their light on the helmet. And then all you see for, which I'm sure overjoyed Edward Selzer, the producer, because it saved money, just the lights going through the tunnels in this mine shaft. I think it's very, very clever. It almost looks like Pac-Man before Pac-Man ever existed. With the Blu-ray copy, which I'm looking at right now, I'm looking at kind of a downgraded a little bit digital copy of it. But with the Blu-ray, you kind of really see what you couldn't on VHS tape, which is the actual glow of these helmets that they're wearing. It's really a beautiful effect. They took some time to paint the cells a certain way to make it look like it's glowy. I really appreciate that. And then, of course, when the Coyote lights a match to be able to see when his helmet goes out, he finds that he's in a room full of dynamite and it explodes. and the cacti on the surface spell out "Yike." I love that
Yep.
gag.
It's fantastic. And something tells me you like this one, but how you just talked about it then, just a suspicion, I'd say. But I do want to also point out that the first Coyote Roadrunner short, Fast and Furious, was actually intended to be a one shot. It was just a funny idea that both Jones and Maltese had. They did it and they thought that was it. But it proved to be so popular that Chuck decided to make another one. And that's why there was such a big gap between the first and the second one. First one came in 1949, and this one's in 1952. We get another one in 1952 as well. So my guess is that early 51 ish is when they started this one, give or take.
Yeah, the first one ended up being so popular that obviously Warner Brothers said, "Hey, boy, give us all of those you can." And they're like, "Okay, but we got to go through production schedule. It's going to take us a minute to get it up and running." But one thing I ought to point out is that these cartoons at the time, post World War II, Warner Brothers would supply military bases and military academies with a lot of times advanced screenings of their films and cartoons and whatever they came out with just as a service to the military. And when my grandfather was in the military in New Mexico at the New Mexico Military Institute, he trained for the Korean War, didn't actually serve there, was actually stationed for a brief conflict in Europe in, I believe, 1950, and never actually served. But one of the cartoons that he saw during his stint in the military was this one. And he remembered it. I had a VHS tape that was called Stars of Space Jam, the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote. And I had that tape when I was visiting my grandparents at one point and was watching it. And my granddad instantly recognized the cartoon. And he said, "Oh, yeah, that's the Roadrunner. I love the Roadrunner. I saw that when I was in military school." And it was wildly popular with servicemen. And they would imitate Paul Julian's recording of it, the Roadrunner that they used in all the Roadrunner cartoons. The meep, 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 meep. And the military guys would start doing that during their training operations. And it was very, very popular. And the military again said, "Hey, we want more of these cartoons." So that reinforced it even more. It was like, "Oh, okay, we got to make more of these Roadrunner cartoons. Everybody loves it." So that's why they ended up becoming the series that they did.
For sure, and I'm glad they did. This is one of my favorite series, although with a caveat: do not watch them all in a row, like that one disc on the Looney Tunes Golden Collection Volume 2, where they had like 10 of them in a row or something. Just don't.
Yeah.
They're great shorts. Just don't watch them in a row.
I have done that, by the way. I have watched all the Roadrunner cartoons in a row, and there's my pal Thad Komorowski. Even he is as big of a Roadrunner fan as I am. Says that's should do it once, but it's not the best way to see them. And that I've been suggesting forever. Hey, why not a complete Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner DVD box set? And the answer is, would anybody but myself and maybe Thad buy it?
Well, I'd buy it, so you got a third person there.
Yeah. And this is before there was a formula. It's only the second cartoon still. It's still fresh and new in this case.
Exactly, because the first one, Fast and Furious, I'm actually amazed comparing that one to the later entries from this one onwards, just how complete it was. There was only a few things that would change after, of course, the Cody's design. They would refine it for this series. I mean, they did it for Operation Rabbit, which is actually the second Cody appearance. This is the third Cody appearance, but the second Roadrunner appearance. So just to confuse everyone, of
Yeah.
course. And please check my review for Operation Rabbit if you haven't done so, guys, because that explains my little theory as to what happened with the Cody character, why he talks in that one and not in this one, and so on. I'm not going to get to that here, but it's just amazing how complete it is. And this one refines it that little bit further. All that we're missing really by this point are the abstract backgrounds. Here, they're still pretty literal, but they're not bad, mind you. They're great backgrounds.
Right. They would eventually, very soon after this, they would start doing more stylized backgrounds. This was Phil DeGard doing very literal backgrounds. And later, of course, Maurice Noble would get in the mix. He would start making really abstract ones, the kind of flat, what I call the yellow sky road runners, where it looks like there's a dust storm in the background and all the sky's all yellow.
Purple
So
plants.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And this is more like a literal, almost kind of a Georgia O'Keeffe, New Mexico painting is what these backgrounds look like.
Exactly. And they aren't
eventually,
bad.
but no, they're beautiful. They're
Yeah.
gorgeous. I mean, especially you look at all the detail in them. But I think when they got further along, they said, you know what, we don't need that kind of detail because it distracts from the action on the screen. We're trying to focus on the characters here. And as the pacing picked up, they said the background's not going to be on screen that long anyway. We don't need super detail. But for the first few, you do get that. So
Yeah. Oh, exactly. And of course, the gags are pretty much set. There's fantastic in here. And one thing I want to point out before we get into the gags, by the way, is Harris Soup is a reference to animator Ken Harris, who was on Chuck Jones's team at the time. So I wanted to definitely point that one out. And if you ever get a chance, definitely listen to Michael Barry's audio commentary. That's on both sets I mentioned earlier, the Golden Collection, Platinum Collection. Some have said, oh, he's a bit dry and this and that. No, he's chock full of wonderful information. And if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't know a lot of things we know today. So definitely shout out to Michael Barrier.
indeed. Yes.
Yeah.
And when we talk about these individual gags, a lot of the Roadrunner cartoons are hard to remember by title because they're all very similar, but you can kind of remember them by certain gags that really stand out. Again, we talked about the glass of water that pays off toward the end. We talked about the mine shaft. There's also, of course, the classic Eat It Joe's, which
Yes.
was definitely inspired by Tex Avery. I think Tex Avery may have been the first one to use Eat It Joe's. And why? I don't know. It just became a cartoon gag that everybody used. And I guess there were restaurant ads everywhere. I don't know why that took off, but
Yeah,
we
alongside Hold the Onions, I think that's the other popular restaurant type thing that
was
was
a Frizz Freeling contribution to that. Tex Avery was the Eat It Joe's guy. Frizz Freeling was the Hold the Onions guy.
yes, exactly. But looking through the short and each gag, we could, I guess, take a look at them in order. I think that's probably the best way to approach it. And with these Roadrunner reviews, guys, what I'm going to do is with myself and whichever guest I have, we're going to say what our favorite gag is as well in the Roadrunner shorts. I mean, the first gag that we see is the whole boxing glove. Heck, how great is that, huh?
Boxing glove on a spring. Yes.
Fantastic. The physics animation of that is just incredible because that's not easy. Just to get it to timed right and just to get the spring look, I guess, realistic. There has to be some realism in these things just because it's a cartoon. And that's why it works so well. And the topper, the glove hits him in the end. Chef's kiss.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Cherry on top. What did
Yeah.
you think of that one, huh?
I love the topper because it's absurd enough and funny enough that the rock ends up being pushed back and slamming the coyote into the wall. But then the glove swinging back and punching him in the face is just brilliant. That's funny.
Exactly. I love that one. And I will say eventually what my favorite is. And I should stress that just because I have a favorite doesn't mean I automatically hate the other gags. It's in some of these is actually going to be very tough, I will say. And this one was definitely a great gag, but I'm not going to say that one's my favorite. We then see the whole tightrope gag. And of course, we see yet another map where we got the wonderful last step being Roadrunner Burger. I mean, see, we got Eat It Joe's, we got the Hold the Onions we mentioned. Now we got Roadrunner Burger, and it's actually nearly lunchtime for me here too. So maybe I'll go and eat one too. And we also hear, she's an acrobat's daughter. I mean, what else are you going to play, right?
Of course. What else is Carl Stalling going to do? Absolutely. And by the way, that gag with the tightrope and the anvil, that's the scene that they used in the movie Space Jam when Porky Pig shows up to call the tunes to a meeting. They interrupt the Roadrunner cartoon on screen. It's that cartoon that Porky Pig shows up and interrupts. And then Michael Jordan's Hollywood actor kids, not his real kids, are sitting there and they're like, yeah, where'd he go? That's the cartoon they're watching in that movie. And of course, the tightrope, when the coyote drops the anvil, the tightrope launches him up in the air. And then he's flung up in the air, but he's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm smart. I've got a parachute, which you don't see beforehand. That's kind of clever too. You realize he's wearing a parachute, but it's not a parachute. It turns out to be just a backpack.
And then we get another topper. What's the other?
Acme aspirin before he falls. Yeah, that's pretty funny.
It's fantastic. Of course, we get the water glass one that we mentioned earlier, where we get the whole setup for that later payoff. And yeah, the beautiful Roadrunners can't read and don't drink. Well, yeah, that speaks for itself, doesn't it?
How do they write if they can't read? Okay.
Exactly. And yeah, I don't know. That's just does my head in, but I absolutely love that gag. And we then, of course, get the mine shaft, which
Yes.
we already discussed. And I'll point out that the song that you hear in that scene is the Dance of the Comedians that you would have heard quite a bit. And you actually do hear it in quite a few of these Roadrunner shorts and various other Warner Brothers shorts at the time. But I just like how the direction is so clear that even when they're just colored dots, you can still follow it.
You have to notice too that by this time in Chuck Jones' career, he'd figured out how to use speed as humor, like the different speeds the characters even go. That was what it was all about. And if you look at some of his really early cartoons, everything's slow. This is light years ahead of Sniffles. I like Sniffles, but this is on a whole nother level. Probably people are still buying t-shirts with Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner on it, and people would not buy a Sniffles shirt if there even was one available.
Exactly.
It's not, but that's
we'll petition the Waters to actually do that, right? We'll petition the Sniffles shirts and all that. But we now come to my favorite gag, and this is probably one of the quickest gags in Roadrunner history, where it's just a stupid spring where you even when you look at it before it's sprung, you just think, how's this gonna work? This is not gonna work. Splat. I don't know why.
yeah.
That probably made me laugh
Well,
the most because of the sheer stupidity of it.
yeah. Well, it's almost like there are two kinds of Roadrunner gags. There are the gags that you think, you know what? Hey, he's got a good idea here. The physics might work. He's got a chance at maybe a successful outcome here. And then, of course, there never is. But then you've got the ones with like the springboard here. They're like, come on.
Exactly.
know.
That's so stupid.
Yeah, you know what's going to happen before he even uses that knife on the rope. You're like, no, dude.
It's not gonna work. I wouldn't say it's the greatest Roadrunner gag of all time or anything, but for some reason, I don't know, that one made me laugh the most in this short, and it's full of great gags. And speaking of which,
He launches himself on the rocket as he had done in the first one.
yes, yeah, that's right.
In
Yeah,
Fast and Furious, except here we get the topper that's the Eat at Joe's.
yeah,
So then we get the rocket skates, which are apparently Acme is based in Fairfield, New Jersey. At least their rocket products division is.
exactly. So shout out to Manny Cruz, who is from New Jersey. Maybe he'll find the factory for us and maybe take a selfie in front of it or something like that. And I typed it in just to see, is Fairfield, New Jersey a real place? And sure enough, it is. And the first thing that pops up is that you can visit Tony Soprano's house, according to Google Maps anyway.
Yeah. So you're playing your degrees of Kevin Bacon or degrees of whatever with media. You're like, okay, what's a connection between Roadrunner cartoons and The Sopranos? Well, there you go.
Exactly. There's your connection right there. But I love the gag with the rocket skates. It's genius because of how the rocket skates, they work too good, right? At first, like you think, oh yeah, maybe he has a chance here. But then it's just too powerful. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And the skates actually drag him along. And I love the expressions he makes when his butt scrapes the rocks. Like, you know that hurts. Just Chuck Jones was a master at that. And you have Ken Harris doing a lot of the expressions as well. That's a match made in heaven. That's funny.
Exactly. And this is also one of those few times where you think, hang on, you're actually onto something here. You could reuse those skates, but maybe just alter your approach to it. It's a product that works.
Yeah.
You just have to adjust to it. That's what I think anyway.
Yeah, maybe he realizes it doesn't have adjustable settings. It's just, it's on like that all the time. He can't control the speed of it. But again, we're looking at cartoon physics here, which cartoon physics, cartoon logic, they don't behave like our world does.
They don't? Of course, yes. But I like how, okay, you think the gag's going to stop, and it would have been funny if it stopped there, but then it starts again. And I just like how it stops for just enough time just for you to think, are they going to stop here? But nope, he's back and he's skating again. And of course, he's in midair, and the skates will, of course, run out of fuel or whatever you want to call it. And
yeah. And then he has a long fall and he holds up a wreath you'd put on a grave. It's an RIP, rest in peace funeral wreath. Like, oh, he's going to die. Of course, that's another thing of Wile E. Coyote. When he falls, of course, his falls are never fatal. But he pulls out the graveside wreath there. And then, of course, you get the payoff for that earlier water gag.
yes, exactly. And to finish off this short, we get A gag that's perhaps used a few times in Roadrunner and a few other cartoons as well, the whole nonsensical nature of just putting one piece of railroad track and
The
apparently then
fake
a train
railroad.
comes. Yeah,
And as predictably happens every time he does this, all of a sudden he looks to the left or to the right, and all of a sudden he's realized, oh, wait a minute, it is a real railroad crossing, and an actual train runs over.
I like how he's dressed up as like an old man, like a crossing guard, because they would have been featured all
Uh-huh.
over, not just, America, but also Australia, where you would have like a nearby cottage where a person would live there and literally their job is to get up and stop traffic because there was no automated boom gates and that. So I thought that was a nice touch. He's like an old man lives nearby or
Huh.
something.
Yeah, yeah, because before they had the automated crossing signals, they'd actually have an actual person at the railroad tracks warning people to stop. Of course, that's a funny little extra touch, isn't it?
Exactly right. So now I've said my favorite gag. Out of all those gags, Matt, which one's your favorite?
My favorite, I think, is the mine shaft. I think that's funny, especially the payoff at the end with the cactus going, yike. That's my favorite.
Beautiful. And
And you
despite the fact it broke the rule, but hey, all the gags are great in this one. And in terms of a score, I mean, this one, it's a masterpiece, really. I think this one even deserves maybe what, a 10, I think, even. Not, you
I
know,
think so.
yeah,
Yeah. This is every bit as good as the first one. I think in a lot of ways it's better because now we got the timing worked out. We've got the characters' designs more defined. And we've got a formula that we're setting up here, and it hasn't gotten stale at all yet. It was still fresh and new. So, yeah, this is a 10. Absolutely. This is one of Chuck Jones' best cartoons.
exactly. Exactly. If this isn't a 10, I don't know what is, if I'm being honest. I can't think of a single flaw. It's, yeah, perfection. It's cartoony at its finest. Definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, guys. And until next time, take care.